PokerStatic.com. We bring you the interviews you want to hear. Now with your hosts, Bret Oliverio and Eric Bickel, the Poker Static Hot Seat.
What's up? Welcome to the Poker Static Hot Seat. Bret Oliverio, Eric Bickel, and tonight's guest, his name is Niman Kenkre. He's an instructor at BlueFire. And Eric, just sort of getting to know a lot of these BlueFire instructors, it seems like they all have something in common. They're all like freaking geniuses. I mean, I'm looking at Niman's bio. Graduated Penn State with a 4.0 and Master of Science in Electrical Engineering. Scored a 1580 on his SATs.
I don't know.
I mean, it's just so freaking sick.
I don't know why I even bother. Because we talk to these guys, and they're all like the brightest people in the country. And here we are, I won't even tell you my SAT score, but it's embarrassing. And I don't know why I'm still trying to play this game. I'm banging my head against the wall against guys like Niman every day. This is insane. Thank you.
Seriously.
Thank you for joining us, Niman. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
The other part of it is Bret and I co-host a sports show, a morning show in Washington, D.C. And, from reading your background, you were a soccer player. You were an All-American in high school. You played in college and played some professionally. I find that fascinating. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey before you got into poker?
Yeah, actually, this is an awesome story. So if you let me indulge, I love this. I played, as you said, I played collegiately, and then I went to graduate school, got my master's, and was only sort of playing recreationally there. Finished, got my master's, and I did the whole traveling Europe thing. So I backpacking around Europe for about 3 months on my own, and I had flown Iceland Air and done most of my backpacking in mainland Europe. But one of the perks of Iceland Air is that it lets you lay over for up to 72 hours in Reykjavik, on your way in and on your way out before you go back. So after being in Europe for 90 days, my last 3 days I was going to be in Reykjavik, and then I had accepted a job, an engineering job back in the States. So literally on the 89th of my 90-day trip, I was just going for a walk, just walking around Iceland. It's beautiful scenery there and everything. And I stumbled across some guys playing soccer, and they were pretty good. So I thought it was just a pickup game with some guys who were just really good players. So I asked them if I could join them. They had odd numbers. As it turns out, that was a professional team practicing in the Icelandic First Division. There's not in Iceland, everything's so safe. You don't see like security and everything. Like you can actually go right up to the president's house and knock on his door. At least you used to be able to back then.
Oh my God.
So anyway, they, for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe they thought, here's this idiot, let's show him up. They let me play with them that day. And as it turns out, I had one of the best days of playing in my life. I really, played well and showed well. And at the end of the day, the coach offered me a contract with, for the rest of the year.
Wow.
With the team. And so literally a day before I was going to go home to the States, I signed on and played for Keflavik Football Club for a year.
Unbelievable.
Now, what was that contract like? I mean, was it big money? Is it, how does that work? Because we think of professional sports, we think of, millions of dollars and notoriety and fame.
Yeah. No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. Obviously, the big leagues in Europe for soccer are like in Spain and England and Italy, maybe Germany too. That's where they make the big bucks. The Icelandic League, it's significantly below the level of that. So, and the pay is reflected. It's actually, I got more money than I would have if I had been playing in like Major League Soccer, for instance. But that's kind of offset by the high cost of living in Iceland as well. So it would probably it would probably equate to something like about $150,000 a year salary, something like that.
Wow. And did you get an opportunity to actually play? Did you get on the field?
I did actually. I did, and I was a starter for most of the year. I had a lot of great experiences. Played with some great players, and it was an episode of my life that's definitely one of my favorites.
Why only
Talk
1 year?
About luck boxing.
Yeah.
I know. Talk about running good, right?
Why only 1 year?
Why only 1 year? Well, this is actually sad. I had a really bad injury that ended my career in one fell swoop. I shattered my ankle. I had a really bad injury. I blew out my ankle. I broke it in 7 places, tore all 4 ligaments, and I tore the tibialis posterior tendon, which is the tendon that runs along the side of the foot all the way up to the knee. I split it right down the middle. So I wasn't able to walk for like a year, and then I can't even play sports even at a recreational level anymore. I can just run basically. That's about it.
Oh my God!
That was sad. I would have stayed on for longer for sure if I could have. But
all right. So then how does poker come into the scene? Then had you been playing sort of recreationally at that time? Were you playing in college? Were you playing with buddies?
No, not at that time. That was I'm old. That was back in 1997. The Iceland experience was. So then I came back and I had a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering, and it was a great time for an engineer because the economy was booming. Believe it or not. And so it was very easy to get a job even with my having had taken the year off. And so I moved to Boston, got a job at an engineering company, making automatic test equipment, and that was it. I didn't really get involved in poker for a while until I guess it was around 2000 and I want to say 2 or 3. I started playing in some home games with some just some buddies, the silly poker games, baseball and Chicago and Queens Wild and all that shit. So then so I was doing that and kind of started realizing I was pretty good at it. Also, around that time, in between my soccer career and when I started playing poker, I was actually a real competitive chess player. I used to travel domestically, not internationally, and play in chess tournaments. I was a candidate master. I guess I technically still am in the U.S. Chess Federation. And that was like sort of, given that I couldn't play physical sports anymore, that was the forum with which I was fostering my competitive spirit, so to speak. So what happened was I got married in 2003, and around that time I didn't have the time to put into chess to maintain the level that I was at. I'd have to being newly married, the amount of time that chess took, it just wasn't going to work with also having a normal life. So I kind of gave it up, but I was kind of floundering without having any game to play or any forum to compete in. That's when I started playing poker a little more seriously and trying to take it seriously as more of at that point it was more of an intellectual pursuit than it was for the purpose of making money. But it just kind of steamrolled from there.
Well, you mentioned that I read in one of your blogs or your bio that you made a small deposit, and since you were married, looking back on it, if you would have busted that original deposit, like most of us have done, you probably would have given up poker for good because your wife at the time wouldn't have wanted you to keep depositing,
Yeah, this is actually a really funny story, and I'm one that I take a lot of pride in. So I had just started playing poker right around the time that I got married, and my wife was not cool with it because she was freaked out that. Yeah, I think she'd had like a gambling addict in her family, some mother's brother or something like that, and she was super. She just didn't like the concept, didn't like me playing poker for money, and she just didn't want to do it. And at that time, I wasn't enough into it that it was something that I was going to make a big fight about. I was just like, if she didn't want me to do it, I was like, all right, fine, I won't do it. And I was actually literally playing the free games. That was back. There was a site called Planet Poker. I don't know if you guys remember that one. Mm-hmm. And I logged on there, had no money on there, and was just playing the free games just for fun, here and there, and that was it. But what happened was my wife went out of town for a business trip, and I was sick, so I couldn't really get out of the house much either. So I was just thinking, you know what, I'm just going to throw $25 in there and play a tournament because I saw a tournament advertised there, and I wasn't even going to tell her about it. Just blow the $25 and then be done with it. And when she came back, just go back to playing for free. So I wasn't very good then. I played a tournament. I think it had like 27 people in it. It was a 3-table tournament, and I had no business winning it, but I won it. So that was probably the greatest biggest running good of my life, because what happened after that? So I won it. I cashed for like $600, $600 and something. And when my wife came back, I told her about it, and she was kind of unhappy, that I did this and didn't tell her about it, but obviously happy that I won that kind of money. And so we made a deal that I would never make another deposit, but I could play as long as I played with that $600 bankroll, and never deposit again. So all the money I've made in poker since then has all come from that initial $25 deposit. I've never made another deposit in my life.
Very nice. Very nice.
So after you cashed for the $600, I mean, at the time it's a ton of money in your account. Do you continue to play sit and goes, more tournaments, cash? I mean,
no,
how do you sort of
once we made
increase
that
your
deal,
bankroll?
I knew the tournaments weren't. It was more like you either win big or you lose the money. And so once I had this deal in place, I was really, I think that's what having this fear of not being able to deposit again and thus not being able to play poker, I think that made me a real bankroll nit, So I started playing, $25 buy-in, which I guess when you think about it, that's not a massive, I mean, based on today's bankroll requirements and stuff, the way the games play, that's actually not all that much. It's 20 plus, 20, 25 buy-in, something like that. So, but at that time I felt like it was, I was being really nitty, but I never really lost. I mean, back then it was so easy. The players were so bad. So, I mean, I very easily, I won, at least 5-6 buy-ins a day, I'd say on average.
Oh my God.
So I kept the third. Yeah, I mean, it was I don't know if you guys were playing poker back then, but it was really soft. Players were really bad.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I believe that I was sort of a pioneer of the lag style too. Nobody was doing that. I mean, everybody would just limp in with like medium pairs or suited connectors, and if they raised, they had like ace king or pocket queens or better, And
sounds like how I play.
And then they'd only bet if they. Yeah, and I mean, it just occurred to me, there's so much. Most of the time, people don't have anything, so if you just raise and bet, they're gonna fold.
Right.
And I started doing that, and I started like raising all the time, playing all my hands, and then everybody would, and I just started winning all of the small pots, all of them, and then whenever I had a big hand, I'd get paid off, so I'd win the big pots because people would way overplay like a one pair hand against me, and I just let them have all the medium-sized pots, which is whenever they showed any resistance, which would mean they'd have like top pair, I would just fold there and not go crazy. But just by winning all the small pots and then getting paid off whenever I had monsters, it was so easy. Like I can't even, I long for those days. Every once in a while, I'll see a big fish come and sit at the table and play like that, and it almost makes me cry.
Right.
I'm just thinking about how it used to be.
So how quickly?
So I motored through the lower limit. I kept the 30 buy-in rule for myself always, but I was able to move up limits really, really fast. And I don't remember now since it was so long ago, but I was playing basically the highest games on the sites that they had really soon, just in a matter of a couple of months, I think.
Wow.
Without ever violating the 30 buy-in rule.
Were there any players that are still around today that you kind of came up with, or that you ran into, you sparred with back in those early days?
Well, it depends what you define as the early days, but Planet Poker was, I think the site is now defunct. Eventually, I moved my money to Party Poker. And there, in the early days of Party Poker, I played a lot with a lot of the guys that are today's legends. I played a lot with Phil Galfond, a lot with Tom Dwan. I'm trying to think of who else are some of the big names that were there. There's a guy his name is Jeff Kudis. I don't know if you guys know of him. He went by the screen name Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Mm.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
I think that he and I were probably the two biggest winners on Party back in the days when everything were good. So I think he retired from poker. He made enough money to not want to play anymore and moved to Costa Rica.
What was Tom's screen name back then?
He played under a couple of them. One of the ones was Mebame, Bahmeh, I think. And he also played under the name Dur.
Uh-huh.
You know, I think, yeah. So, but the Mebame one was the one that he played a lot on, and I played against him pretty.
Now, was he
When
also
you played with him?
I assume he had to. Go ahead, Bret.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, when you played with him, did you realize, wow, this guy's a special player, or was he just another one of the guys back then?
Well, he definitely wasn't one of the best at for the majority of the time that I played him. He eventually got better, but he was always one of the hardest to play against because he was super, super aggressive. Like, I was always considered to be very aggressive, but I wasn't really as aggressive. I was always very loose, and I would play a lot of pots, and I would splish and splash and, make little moves and stuff. But Tom was just, bang, bang, bang. It was impossible to pot control against him because he would just fire like crazy and overbet and you normally didn't see overbets except from Total Fish back then. Tom was one of the first that started, first players that I started seeing overbets from in a way that was good and made it hard. So it was really uncomfortable to play against. But I think that the better players at the time still probably had an edge on him at the end of the day. It was never fun playing against him, but I think you could still make money off him. As time went on, he clearly learned to harness that aggression and apply it, very well. And now he's, super genius. But back then he was probably just sort of formulating and creating that style. And stylistically it was tough, but it had a lot of rough edges to it. It was a little out of control maybe.
Right.
When once he's obviously an extremely intelligent person, and once he was able to sort of make it his own and kind of fine tune it, he motored through the ranks and started annihilating everybody.
How did you put your style together? Were you at the time? Were you a member of 2+2? Were you chatting with people? Were you familiar with concepts that are common these days of like balancing ranges and 3-betting light and 4-betting light and all of that, or did you sort of just stumble onto that on your own?
Yeah, I kind of crafted it myself. It's one of the things that I noticed was that, Ace King is only a 60% favorite or a little bit over 60% favorite over like 7 deuce offsuit. And when people were playing their hands in such a transparent fashion, plus would always give you credit for what you represented, I just realized that your cards matter so little that you can just, I started doing something that people didn't do back then, which was take control of the hand, be the aggressor, be the guy who's has the right to the pot by being the one who's taking control of the pot. And by doing that, I would frustrate people because they would know that I couldn't have it all the time because I literally played like probably 70% of my hands for a while there before players started getting better. But at the same time, they didn't know how to play back at me when they didn't have the goods. And then whenever they did play back at me, I was always, I was able to fold hands too. So so I didn't, to answer your question, I didn't participate in the 2+2 forums too much, and I don't really know any poker players that I was, particularly good friends with. So I didn't really, it was something that I was sort of formulating on my own. The 3-betting is another thing. I mean, back then, if someone 3-bet, they had ace king, pocket queens, pocket kings, or pocket aces. That was it. And so then people would, sometimes try to catch a flop against them, and if they missed, then they would fold. Whereas I started creating this idea of 3-betting light, and then all of a sudden, if you 3-bet light, everybody was completely freezes up, and then you can do whatever you want with the hand. So I believe, I mean, maybe I'm being a little self-indulgent here, but I believe that I was one of the first, if not, the first to really incorporate sort of this very loose style into my game. And I was pretty aggressive, but not as aggressive as I had a reputation for, which actually worked to my benefit. It was more, I was trying to win every pot, but I never really put my foot on the gas and tried to take people off of good hands as much. I would take them off of all their medium strength and weak hands, and in doing so, I realized it was also creating a level of like psychological frustration for them, so that they would be primed to go for 200 big blinds whenever they had top pair. So then I was able to exploit that way as well. But
Now,
I know I got off track a little bit. My answer is no. I didn't really have a lot of communication with other poker players, be it in the forums or just anybody to talk to. So I did kind of formulate it myself.
At this point, when you're sort of running players over, playing a different style than everyone else, and profiting off them and getting paid off, what limits were you playing? Was it all the way up to 5-10, or were you playing higher, 10-20, 25-50?
Yeah, my two main games were 10-20 and 25-50. My bread and butter game, the one that I logged the most hours at, was 10-20. I did play 25-50 as well, but I never really went down to 5-10 until I think before we went on the air. I was talking to you guys about how I had sort of a period of time where my I couldn't do this anymore, and I had the game kind of caught up, and I didn't just as well tried to think that I could still play the way that I was playing, like opening under the gun with 2-5 suited and calling a 3-bet, and I just before so I forgot what was your question. I'm sorry, I got off track.
Well, I tell you, I wanted to just to give people context though of how how far you and how much you've achieved in this game for people that aren't familiar with you. I mean, you got to the point where you were making 7 figures a year, and I remember reading in your blog that one year in particular, it might have been 2007, maybe it was 2008. In the whole year, Bret, try to comprehend this. He lost 8 days. He literally had 8 losing days in an entire year playing the cash games. And so he said he probably played something like 270 days out of that year, something like that, and he only lost 8 of them. So, I mean, this is a guy that conquered the games at the highest levels, and then you reach that point where, you had some personal difficulties. I know you blogged about your divorce, ultimately, and that may have contributed to some of it. What was that like, trying to adjust and figure out where you are in this game?
Oh man, I can't even begin to tell you what a toll that, because obviously going through the divorce was a very difficult thing, just setting poker aside, just from a personal standpoint. And then it coincided with my poker results really falling off dramatically. I went from 3 years in a row making 7 figures to the next year just making 6. And so
still nice.
Well, yeah, but it was, I mean,
that's a huge drop off. That's a huge drop off. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it was really like, so I'm going through the emotional turmoil of the divorce, and I don't know how much of that is affecting my poker. I felt whenever I was at the tables, I felt like I was still playing my best, but I was clearly on like perennial tilt and wasn't really emotionally equipped to play with an even keel and stuff. But on top of that, that was also the times that the game just got a lot tougher, and everybody's win rates dropped, and so all of a sudden I was stubborn. I mean, because the players were bad, I could play any 2 cards just about. I mean, back then I played any 2 cards that could make a flush, any 2 cards that could make a 2-card straight, any position, 3-bet, doesn't matter. And I was resistant to let go of that, because I mean, I know that's how, I was kind of proud of myself. I know I was kind of like respected and admired for playing this crazy style, and there was a bit of ego involved there, and I tried to keep doing it, and I would open, like I said, 3-6 suited under the gun, and then I'd get 3-bet and I'd call, and then I'd try to get creative on the flop, or if I flopped a pair, I'd call once and see what, and all of a sudden people were much better. They were much more balanced. They were 3-betting light and heavy. You wouldn't always stack them if you made a big hand. They started understanding relative hand strengths and everything, and all of a sudden I couldn't play as loosely. But I had a real hard time coming to terms with that. Because I mean, I was just thinking I was going to make $1 million plus a year for the rest of my life. Because I wasn't thinking about how new this field is and how unstable in a sense it is in terms of it can go a lot of different directions. I just thought this is the way it is. I'm smart, and so I'm going to win.
What do you attribute the changes to in the games? Is it simply the matter of the legislation? Is it the training sites? What is the one big factor that sort of made it happen seemingly overnight?
Well, I think the training sites is a big part of it. I think that the poker, there was a boom, right? We had Chris Moneymaker win the World Series of Poker, and all of a sudden the Travel Channel started televising the
WPT.
I forgot what it's called, WPT, yeah. And then the guys that won the first couple ones were players like Gus Hansen, who was just playing like a psycho. So everybody thought they could do it, and it was on TV so much, and people were talking about it. It was really like a cultural boom. So you had tons of people rush into it and playing that just weren't very smart people. And furthermore, they didn't have any templates. They didn't know how you're supposed to play. So they were kind of trying to make it up on their own, and they weren't very smart, so they couldn't do it. Now, what happened, I believe, is that it was never sustainable that way, because there was way more money being taken out of poker by the winners. People like your Phil Galfons and your Tom Dwans and your Jeff Kudises and myself and stuff. The amount of money that was being won by the winners was way more than the amount that was being lost by the losers. Furthermore, as the economy got tougher, the casual player that would throw $100 online knowing he was going to lose it just for fun, people didn't have that kind of luxury anymore. I think that contributed to it a lot. And then, of course, finally, the training sites did provide. I said, earlier that people were missing the templates. I think the training sites provided people with a framework with how to play. Obviously poker is a complex game, and you can't just watch a couple videos and be a superstar player. But at least you can kind of get some sense. You can go from knowing nothing to knowing, the first part of the learning curve of poker can be ramped up very quickly if you have, half a brain on your shoulders. It's the last, 10% that becomes much harder. But people went from zero to that last 10% with the benefits of the training sites and stuff. And of course, the massive fish just lost their money.
Right.
So you're smooth sailing, you're making millions, but then all of a sudden you start hitting a downswing. The game's changing. You're having a tough time adjusting. You're going through a divorce. Not trying to put you on tilt, but is there a specific low point that you remember in your life at that time? Like, did you have a monster losing session? Then you have you're spewing money with the attorneys. I'm just curious about sort of that side of things.
I can definitely point to the worst time in my life, which was my son was born in why am I drawing a blank here? 2006, and when he was born, that summer, just a couple months before he was born, my wife's father had retired. And a lot of the, I don't want to get into too much of the nitty gritty, but a lot of the conflict between my wife and I it was a triangle. It was the role of her parents and their interference, and just, they were never that cool with poker, but it was more independent of poker than anything. It was just, there was a real conflict between that, and I didn't like the way my wife didn't support me and so on. So anyway, they came to be with us, to help with the kid, that summer. And during that time, it was just miserable. It was torture, because they were just running around trying to, run everything, and just, it was a real conflictual relationship, and there was no love lost between us, and things got very hostile. But at the same time, I had no space from them because I was working at home, as an online poker player. So it's not like I could go to a job, stay at the job for as long as I can, and then just deal with them in the evenings. I had to deal with them all day long, and it was that was so stressful. And I was having a son was a wonderful thing, and I have a great, it was only a positive thing. But having something new like that is so such a dramatic change in your life. It also causes a lot of stress. So the combination of the stress of a new child, the massive conflict with my wife, having the two most hated people in the world for me in my face all the time. They stayed for 3 months, and then I think that also contributed to by far the worst downswing of my poker career. I lost about $250,000 playing mostly just 10-20 in a span of about 45 days.
Wow.
And,
oh my God.
Yeah, and that was like, that I again, I had deluded myself into thinking that while I'm playing, I'm shut out from all the rest of the negativity and I'm playing my best. But clearly I wasn't, and I was too stubborn to realize that I wasn't. So all of a sudden I'm just, my marriage is getting to the cusp of divorce, which is really hard because we got the kid, and now all of a sudden I'm losing in massive droves in poker, and I was so confident that poker was going to be the thing that I'm going to be super rich in playing poker and be ready to retire in another couple of years. All of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, can I still play this game? And it was like, I developed an ulcer, and it was that was definitely rock bottom for me, both from a poker perspective and from a life perspective, and it was I wouldn't wish that time on my worst enemy.
I don't know why I'm curious about this, but was there a cultural difference with your wife's parents? Like, was that part of it?
No, they're just terrible people.
Is that really? That's funny.
I mean, no, they're
just ran bad with the in-law. It ran bad with the in-laws.
Yeah.
It's actually, I got as long as we're on the topic of the cultural thing, I'll tell you. So my wife was my ex-wife was born and grew up in India. Her family moved to the United States when she was 15 years old. So I started dating her back in 2001, and when I was going to propose to her, I told my mom, and I was expecting her to be really excited and stuff, because she had always kind of my parents had always kind of hoped that I would end up with an Indian girl, and most of the girls I dated before that weren't Indian. But as it turns out, my mom was not super thrilled, and I didn't really know why. I mean, she was happy, but I found out later. My mom didn't tell me this until until we filed for divorce. This is a weird kind of coincidence. My wife's mother's brother is best friends, or was best friends in college, with my mother's sister's husband. So the two uncles. And this is her own brother, her being my wife's mother's brother. When he heard from my uncle, my aunt's husband, that I was getting married to this girl, he begged my uncle to tell my mom for me not to marry into that family. He said that family is totally fucked up, and they're miserable people, and just tell Niman not to marry her because you don't want to marry into that family. Now, my mom never told me that because I wouldn't have listened to her. You know what I mean? Like if I was in love with her at the time, I wasn't going to say, get some third, her mother's brother tells my uncle and he tells my mom not to marry into the family because nothing wrong with her, but because of the parents. I would have been like, get out of my face. You know what I mean?
Right.
But so my mom didn't even tell me because she didn't want to put any kind of a damper on my enthusiasm. And that was the right thing to do. I wouldn't have let it influence my decision. But in retrospect, it all makes sense. She's Preeti's mother, who's the devil. She's completely estranged from all of her siblings and everything. They didn't even come to our wedding, even though it was in the same town where they were living in and stuff. It was really, she's really a piece of work.
Oh, wow.
Did you ever think about, during that time, were you seeing a psychologist? Did you think about taking on like a life coach or even a poker mental coach?
I actually didn't at that time, and I should have. Since then, there was a real like hostile period. Again, I don't know how much of that I want to share, but I can tell you that 3 months they were going to stay with us indefinitely, And it wasn't even so much that they were so bad, but it was the conflict between me and Preeti always taking their side that really ended up. And so the episode ended when I actually called the police and had them thrown out of my house.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
So you can imagine that's not really gonna make for, with her being, super attached to them. That was the end of the marriage. But because we had, a son that was only a year old that we both loved very much, we tried to make it work, and we actually hung on for another almost 2 years or a year and a half. But it was, after that, it was never the same. So at that time that I just described to you, I wasn't seeing anybody. But later on, when it became clear that this was heading towards a divorce, I did start seeing a shrink, and I still see him today. It's I have sessions once every couple of weeks, and I just talk to him for an hour. It helps.
Did you ever work with?
How is that?
Go ahead, Bret.
Go ahead. No, how is that for your poker game, or is it totally separate and it's just for your personal life?
It was. It helped, but not tremendously so. It was more just sort of like keeping a general. It helped me be sort of in a good frame of mind, which is always good for poker. But I didn't really talk to him too specifically about poker. I mean, I did talk to him about, when I would get stressed about downswings and stuff, but he's not sort of privy to the field, and he didn't really understand it. That didn't really help too much. But to follow up on the question you asked, I did actually, just this year, I took a couple of sessions with Jared Tendler, which I assume you guys know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's a mental game coach. Yeah. And I actually did a very unusual thing, which most people don't do. Most people go to a mental game coach when their game's in the crapper. I actually was just looking to continue to stay ahead, and I actually started working with Jared when my game was really good. I was winning a lot and, being quite successful, but I just thought it would be a nice time to maybe supplement it, and I would probably get the most out of it when I could work with him, as opposed to just being on wild tilt and just needing somebody to get me off tilt. And I have nothing but wonderful things to say about him. He's a fantastic. He's got a really good framework of how to approach the mental game of poker, and he's very, very good at communicating. And it's been a tremendous experience for me, and it's really helped my poker working with him. I do intend to continue to work with him. I mean, it won't be, it's only like one session every now and again, just to sort of keep abreast. But that's that definitely helped my game. I really wish I had done it a lot sooner than that. I only started doing it this year.
Huh. And you never worked with Tommy Angelo in the past?
I haven't, no.
Wow. Because I from reading some of your entries, I almost felt like I was reading some of Tommy's thoughts, So maybe that's some of the things.
Is that right?
Yeah, I felt that, but who knows? When did
I did see his.
Go ahead.
I saw his videos, the tiltlessness video series.
Right.
I did watch that on Deuces Cracked. I got a trial membership there and saw that, but that's it.
Right. Okay. So some of the philosophies you've heard of anyway. When did Blue Fire come into play, and how did that work? I'm assuming Phil came to you, or did Billy come to you, his business partner first?
Yeah, Billy was actually Phil and I, as I mentioned, we played together a lot back in the day. And Phil has mentioned that back in the early day when he was just coming up, some of the stuff that he put, he learned a lot from was my posts on 2+2, and he always thought of me as like a very good at communicating my thoughts and stuff. So I know that I was always somebody that was on Phil's mind when he started to take this on. As far as Billy Murphy, who, as you guys know, is the CEO, and he founded the company. He was actually a student of mine, a poker student. I do private lessons, but I also every once in a while I'll run a group lesson. And Billy was in a group of mine, and so I think that he had experience of, it was like he was in it for about 6 lessons, so he had firsthand experience of my teaching ability and thought that I would be a good fit for that. So then I think Billy and Phil got together, and then they approached me. Just to get on board. I'd actually been contacted by a number of other sites in the past, and I'd never gotten into it before. I'd never really explored it too much before, but I'd always liked and respected Phil a lot, and I liked the idea of starting a company from the ground up instead of joining one that had already been established for a while. And I also like the idea of having a greater sense of like intellectual ownership, because it was just a few of us, so there was sort of a greater sense of kind of community with us pros. I don't know if you guys have, I know you guys have had a chance to talk to some of the other guys, and I've developed. Strangely enough, I've never actually personally met any of my colleagues at BlueFire, but I still consider them to be pretty good friends now.
Wow, and that's just through like conference calls and things of that nature?
Yeah. Jiggy, Martin Jaguar,
right?
He and I actually did a collaborative series that went over really well on BlueFire. I think it's one of the most widely watched series on BlueFire, where we got on a Skype call together and discussed, first a session of mine and then a session of his, and so it was really neat to talk to a brilliant poker mind and a really cool guy, and we did probably 8 or 9 of these videos. No, maybe even more than that, because I think it was like, I don't remember now, but it was a lot. And each one was, about an hour long, and we kind of had a chance to talk before and after. And so, it just kind of built up a rapport, got basically as close as you can get without actually meeting someone.
Right.
Now, where exactly is your game now? What limits are you playing, and are you still crushing it, or how are things going for you poker-wise?
Definitely not crushing it at the level that I was before. But I am now back winning at a good clip, and feel like I'm comfortably in command of the game and probably beating it as much as I'm capable of now, given my abilities and the quality of the opposition, which is obviously much better now. I play 5, 10, and 10, 20. Those are my main games. I'll play. I've actually started playing way more tables than I used to. I play like 15 at a time now. So I'll just fill up my screen with the 15 tables. If there's not enough going at those limits, I'll play a couple more of 3, 6. But it's 90% of what I play is 5, 10, and 10, 20 now.
And then, so are you doing any table selecting, or are you basically just firing up the most tables that you can at that particular limit?
Yeah, no, I mean, the number of tables that I play at those limits, I just play all the games. So
right.
So no, I'm not doing any table selecting. I've actually never done table selecting. I'll play with anybody. I don't think I've ever turned down a game from anybody. It may be a little foolhardy or a little egotistical, but the way I see it is, I was talking about this with my good friend Rich Lindecker. Do you guys know who he is? He's Monsignor.
No.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Enormous winner, yeah. And I was playing in a game with him and Take Chip, Phil Dottell, 2 enormous winners, bigger winners than me. We were talking about that, and I was just thinking, I was just saying, I've never in my career ever turned down a game from anybody, because the way I figure is, if I'm a favorite, well, then I'll be, plus dollars EV wise. And if I'm not, it's a good opportunity for me to get better, because, if you're playing against people that you're worse than all the time, you're not really going to get better too much. So, it's clearly, whether or not you like it, when you play day in and day out, especially a lot of tables, you're not necessarily taxing your brain and thinking about all the little intricacies of balance and feel and flow and things like that. But when you're playing against excellent players, you automatically are, because you feel like, you got to, keep up with them. So then I actually really like playing against very good players. And in doing so, I find myself pushing my abilities in my brain to the point where when I then go back to play against the weaker players, it's that much easier, because I've already, I'm now used to pushing myself a little bit further.
Are you strictly playing? No, I'm sorry, Brett. Are you strictly playing no limit hold'em? Are you playing heads up? Mostly 6 max? What are you focusing on these days?
It's mostly 6 max. I don't play any full ring. I will play heads up. The problem with heads up is it's just hard to get action. Really, you know what I mean? Because
right.
No one will really give you action if they think you're good. So it's I would say 95% of the time I'm playing 6 max no limit hold'em. I've splashed around a little bit with PLO, but it's that's more just if I want a break and deviate. For the most part.
Now you're a single parent, so, and as a poker player, I mean, it's sort of unusual. What's sort of like a typical day for you? What time are you waking up, and what's your schedule like with your kid, and then of course playing?
Yeah, I know it's different. I'm usually up pretty early, about 7:30 in the morning. And on the weekdays, I get my as you said, I'm a single parent and I have primary custody of my boy. So I'll get him ready. Have breakfast with him, take him to his daycare. He'll start kindergarten next year, but this year he's still in daycare, so there's more. I can take him whenever I want. But I usually will get him there to school by about 9. And then I come home. I usually do some kind of exercise for about an hour, which is, usually I'll just go for a short run, or I had mentioned my soccer. I can't really do too much, but I can, run or bike. In the good weather, I actually used to bike him to his daycare, which is a nice way to spend time with him and get exercise at the same time. And then I just buckle down. I play one long session that ends about 5:30. And then I gotta pick him up by 6. So then I just go pick him up, and then the evening's all about him. I'll cook dinner, and then we'll have dinner together, and then just play games. Started teaching him chess and the memory game and stuff like that until it's time for him to get him to bed. Once I put him down, once I put him down, I make lunch for the next day. So that takes up, a little bit of time because I want to cook properly and nutritionally for him.
Yeah, but Eric, let me interrupt you real quick, because Eric and I talk about this all the time. It's like the games, at least the games we play, which are considerably smaller than what you play, those games are even harder during the day. I mean, aren't you tempted to play at night? Just seemingly there'd be more fish.
I'd love to. Yeah,
no,
there's no question.
Levels.
When I do, on the days when he is with my ex, like Wednesday nights she has him. So I try to play in the evenings on Wednesday, and there's a discernible difference. The games are significantly softer, and I'd love to, but there's just no logistical way. I just because I can't. He's 4 years old. He's running around. There's no way he would let me play and maintain my focus. He's at the point where he's very much wants to play with me all the time. He doesn't really play on his own all that much. So, and even if he did, he'd always be like asking me, "Hey, did you see this? Look at me doing this or whatever." So there's just no way that I can play when he's around. So yeah, I realize I'm giving up a lot in expected value that way, but I don't see any way around that. Maybe when he gets older,
what about,
be able to he can fend for himself.
What about, real quick before we let you go, what about live poker? Have you delved into that at all? The tournament scene? Do you have dreams of winning the main event? You play?
Well, I'll tell you, in terms of the last live tournament I played in was about 5 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a little bit outside the cash bubble. And I had so many chips. There were 2 players in the tournament with an absolutely massive amount of chips. We were both at the same table, and I ended up. I had, think about this from a tournament standpoint. I had about 350 big blinds, and this guy had me covered, and I got it all in pre-flop with aces against his kings. Mm-hmm. If I'd won that hand, I would have had about a fifth of the chips in play with like 30 people left. And he spiked a king and he lost, and I was just like sweating and like I was like, all right, forget this. I'm never playing tournaments again.
Hilarious.
I couldn't take it psychologically. That was just so brutal. So no, I don't. So I don't play the tournaments, and I don't really have any plans to. Though I may play in the main event or something. I haven't ruled it out. However, I used to, whenever the WPT came to Foxwoods, I used to go there and play in the cash games, which the cash games are quite lucrative there. I haven't done that in the last couple of years just because I've gone through this very difficult divorce, and it would have the perception of impropriety if I take, because I wouldn't want to go and play 5-10 in a live cash game. If I'm playing cash game, I want to play like 25-50 at least, if not higher than that. So I'd need to take a significant bankroll, but then it's all cash, and the divorce is going on. It was just too much to deal with in terms of the perceptions of impropriety and having to be allowed to do that with the courts and stuff. So I haven't actually played live poker in over 2 years now, but I do intend to start getting back to that. It's logistically a little bit difficult because I have my son, but I think that at times when there's a tournament traveling to the Borgata, which is nearby for me, or Foxwoods or whatever, I'll see if my ex can watch him for a few days and go. And so I expect to start playing some live poker next year.
Very nice.
Well, listen, I think everybody should check out BlueFirePoker.com and check out your blog. I mean, obviously, you get pretty personal in there, and, it's nice to see that, for the most part, you keep it updated every few days or so. What can we expect to see you in the near future as far as videos go? Do you have any ideas of...
Yeah, well, I know that Martin and I are going to try to finish our series, which I was talking about. I think that was a series that went over really well, and we enjoyed doing it a lot. It's just been very difficult to coordinate our schedules together. We both seem to have sort of smaller windows to work with, so hopefully that'll be coming up soon. I've done one comment I actually like to make about my videos too is I know that one of the complaints that some people had about my videos is that I was explaining some basic concepts too thoroughly. I have taken those comments to heart, and I've sort of become a little less detailed in terms of that, except for with the more complex concepts. So I plan to do that going forward. But other than that, I guess I don't have any specific videos in mind right now that I could tell you about. They'll just be more playing videos across a variety of limits. I've recently done a micro stakes one that'll be coming out soon, as well as a one which at 1020, which I haven't done a video that high before. I didn't want to sort of give up too much in the way of my reads in my bread and butter games, but I decided to do one. And then I know that some of my videos that are most well received are my hand analysis ones, so I do intend to try to do some more of those this year.
Very nice.
Nice. Well, listen, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Of course, good luck at the tables, and we'll look for you on Blue Fire. So thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much, guys. I really enjoyed it. Appreciate it.